My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. I'd been sitting in this parking lot for 3 hours, waiting for the urgent care clinic to open so I could use their bathroom. The sun was starting to come up over the mountains, painting the Colorado sky in shades of pink and gold that would have taken my breath away if I'd had any breath left to take. 6 months ago, I'd been Dr. Maya Rodriguez, one of the youngest ER surgeons at Denver Memorial Hospital. Now I was just Maya, sleeping in a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a cracked windshield, wearing scrubs I'd stolen from a hospital donation bin because they were the only clean clothes I had left. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent 10 years learning how to save lives, and I couldn't even save my own. A tap on my window made me jump. A woman in a dark suit was standing there, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not pity exactly. More like recognition. I cracked the window an inch. The clinic doesn't open for another 20 minutes. I'm not here for the clinic, she said. I'm here for you. Are you Dr. Maya Rodriguez? My stomach dropped. Process server. Had to be. Brandon had probably found some new way to screw me over. Some clause in our divorce settlement I'd missed. Depends who's asking. My name is Patricia Chen. I'm an attorney with Morrison & Associates in Boulder. I've been looking for you for 2 weeks. She held up a business card. It's about your grandfather. I hadn't spoken to my grandfather in 15 years. Not since my mother died, and he'd told my father that marrying a clinic nurse from nowhere had been his son's biggest mistake. My father had walked away from the family fortune that day, and I'd grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment instead of the mansion in Cherry Creek. I don't have a grandfather, I said. You did. Thomas Chen passed away 3 weeks ago. Patricia's expression softened slightly. He left you everything. His estate is valued at approximately $58 million, including the Chen Medical Group, 5 hospitals across Colorado and Wyoming. I actually laughed. It came out bitter and broken. That's a hell of a prank. Did Brandon put you up to this? Your ex-husband? Patricia pulled out a folder. Dr. Rodriguez, I assure you this is completely legitimate. Your grandfather. He'd been following your career for years. When he heard what happened, the whistleblowing, the license suspension, everything, he tried to reach out. But he passed away before he could make contact. She handed me the folder through the window. Inside were legal documents, bank statements, property deeds. The numbers were so large they didn't even look real. There's one condition, Patricia continued. Mountain View Hospital in Pine Ridge, it's the smallest facility in the network, about 2 hours north of here. It's been losing money for years, and the board wants to close it and sell the land. You have 18 months to turn it around. Make it break even, or the entire inheritance goes to your cousin, David Chen. Why would he do that? My voice came out as a whisper. He said I wasn't family. Read the letter, Patricia said quietly. It's in the folder. And Dr. Rodriguez? Your grandfather specified that if you accept, the board has to give you full authority as chief medical officer. They can't override your decisions, but if you walk away, she shrugged. David Chen is already in talks with Horizon Healthcare Corporation to liquidate the assets. She walked back to her car, leaving me sitting there with a folder full of documents that promised to change everything or ruin me completely. The letter was handwritten, the ink slightly smudged in places. Maya, it read, I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I said terrible things about your mother, about your father's choices. I was wrong. He chose love over money, integrity over reputation. He was the better man, and you are his daughter in every way that matters. I watched you from afar, your medical school graduation, your residency, your first surgery. I saw you risk everything to report that cardiac units falsified mortality rates. You saved lives that day, even though it cost you yours. You have your father's conscience and your mother's compassion. You are what I should have been. Mountain View Hospital serves 3 counties with no other healthcare access. The board wants to close it because it's not profitable. But some things matter more than profit. I should have learned that lesson 30 years ago. Maybe you can teach me now, even in death. Prove me wrong one last time. Show me that integrity can survive in this world. Your grandfather. I sat there until the clinic opened, reading that letter over and over, tears streaming down my face. 2 days later, I pulled into Pine Ridge, Wyoming. The town was smaller than I'd expected, one main street, maybe 3,000 people, surrounded by prairie grass that stretched to the horizon. Mountain View Hospital sat at the edge of town, a low brick building that looked like it had been built in the 70s and forgotten. The inside was worse. Flickering fluorescent lights, linoleum floors with chunks missing, equipment that belonged in a museum. But it was full. The waiting room had at least 30 people in it, ranch workers with broken bones, elderly folks who looked like they'd been waiting hours, a young mother with a crying baby. "Can I help you?" The woman at the front desk looked exhausted. Her scrubs faded from too many washings. "I'm looking for Dr. Margaret Foster." "I'm Dr. Maya Rodriguez." The woman's eyebrows shot up. "You're the granddaughter? We heard you were coming." She picked up a phone, pressed a few buttons. "Dr. Foster? She's here." 3 minutes later, a woman in her 60s appeared, white coat wrinkled, stethoscope around her neck. "Dr. Rodriguez. I wish I could say welcome, but honestly, I wish you'd stayed wherever you were." Not the greeting I'd expected. "Excuse me? Come on." She gestured for me to follow. "Let me show you what you've inherited." The tour was brutal. One functioning CT scanner that broke down twice a week, an OR that could only handle basic procedures, a nursing staff of 8 for a hospital that should have had 20, no specialists within 100 miles. We serve the Wind River Reservation, 3 counties of ranch land, and a migrant worker population that triples during harvest season. Dr. Foster explained, leading me through a hallway where water stains marked the ceiling. "We're the only hospital for 150 miles. But we're hemorrhaging money. The equipment is ancient, and the board." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "The board wants to close us and sell the land to a development company. Your cousin David has been courting them for months. Why would you want me to stay away?" She turned to face me fully. "Because you're 32 years old, you haven't practiced medicine in 6 months, and you lost your license for whistleblowing. The board is going to eat you alive. They don't want you to succeed. They want you to fail so they can sell this place and walk away with fat severance packages." She softened slightly. "Your grandfather was a bastard in a lot of ways, but he believed in this hospital. He believed it represented something important. But belief doesn't pay for new MRI machines or recruit specialists to the middle of nowhere. Who's on the board?" "David Chen, your cousin. He's been managing the family's investments." "Dr. Lawrence Morrison, semi-retired surgeon, mostly interested in his golf game." "Janet Blackwood, former hospital administrator. Nice enough, but she thinks this place is unsalvageable." "And Marcus Hall." Her expression went cold. "Your ex-husband." The world tilted. "What?" "He joined the board 2 months ago as a healthcare management consultant. Apparently, he has extensive experience in hospital administration." Dr. Foster's tone made it clear what she thought of that. "He's been pushing hard for the sale. Says it's the only financially responsible option." "Brandon. Of course. He'd destroyed my career once. Why not show up to finish the job?" "When's the next board meeting?" "Tomorrow night. They're expecting you to show up, make some nice speech, and resign. Then they can vote to close and move on with their lives." "And if I don't resign?" Dr. Foster almost smiled. "Then things get interesting." That night, I slept in the hospital's on-call room. It wasn't much a narrow bed, a bathroom that smelled like industrial cleaner, but it was the first real bed I'd slept in since the divorce. I lay there, staring at the water-stained ceiling, thinking about my mother. She'd been a clinic nurse in a rural town not much different from this one. She'd met my father when he came to volunteer during a health crisis. He'd been slumming it, according to my grandfather, running away from responsibility. But my father always said he'd found his purpose in that clinic, watching my mother handle 12-hour shifts with grace and compassion. He'd given up everything to stay with her. The Chen fortune, the family business, the mansion in Cherry Creek, and he'd never regretted it. Maybe that's what integrity looked like. Not the big moments, but the daily choice to stay when leaving would be easier. The board meeting was held in a conference room that overlooked the parking lot. The table was fake wood, the chairs didn't match, and someone had tried to cover a crack in the wall with a motivational poster about teamwork. David Chen looked exactly like his Facebook photos, expensively dressed, perfectly groomed, the kind of man who'd never missed a meal or worried about money. Maya. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough." Janet Blackwood offered a sympathetic smile. Dr. Morrison barely looked up from his phone. And then there was Brandon. He'd gained weight, I noticed. His hairline had receded, but he still had that expression, the one that said he was the smartest person in any room. "Maya." His voice dripped with false concern. "I heard about your situation. Sleeping in your car. That must have been difficult." "Let's get started," I said, taking the empty seat at the head of the table. My grandfather's chair. David leaned back, steepling his fingers. "I'll be direct. Mountain View Hospital is a failing asset. We're losing approximately $200,000 per month. The facility is outdated, the patient population can't pay, and we can't recruit quality staff to the middle of nowhere." Horizon Healthcare Corporation has made an offer to purchase the land for $12 million. We vote to accept, close the hospital in 6 months, and walk away clean. The sale proceeds would be divided among the other facilities in the network, Brandon added, his tone businesslike. It's the financially responsible decision. Except the will specifies that I have 18 months to turn this facility around, I said. You can't sell without my approval. Technically correct, David agreed. But Maya, be realistic. You're a suspended surgeon with no administrative experience. This hospital needs major capital investment, easily $10 million just to meet current standards. Where's that money going to come from? And even if we had it, we'd need to recruit specialists, upgrade technology, build a patient base that can actually pay. It's not going to happen. Not to mention, Brandon said, and there was an edge to his voice now, the liability issues. You're proposing to run a hospital without a license to practice medicine. The malpractice insurance alone, I have medical oversight. Dr. Foster interrupted from the doorway. I hadn't even realized she'd arrived. Dr. Rodriguez will be serving as Chief Medical Officer with full administrative authority, which doesn't require a medical license. I'll supervise any clinical decisions until her license is reinstated. Which, given that the review board is investigating the original complaint, should happen within 6 months. Brandon's jaw tightened. He'd always hated being contradicted. The point remains, David said smoothly, that turning this hospital around is essentially impossible. We're not being cruel, Maya. We're being realistic. Take a settlement, say, $5 million and walk away. Build a life somewhere else. $5 million. 6 months ago, I'd have thought that was all the money in the world. Now I knew exactly what it was. A bribe to let them destroy something important. No. I'm sorry? No. I'm not walking away. I'm staying. I'm going to turn this hospital around, and in 18 months you're all going to vote to keep it open. I looked directly at Brandon. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Janet spoke up. Dr. Rodriguez, I appreciate your passion, but you should know that David has already been in contact with Horizon. They're prepared to wait the 18 months and then make their offer when you inevitably fail. Then, I guess I'd better not fail. David stood, buttoning his suit jacket. We'll reconvene in 3 months for a progress review. I expect we'll be having a very different conversation by then. He paused at the door. Grandfather was sentimental in his old age. Don't mistake that for him being right about you. After they left, Dr. Foster sat down across from me. That was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. I pulled out the folder Patricia had given me. I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Patient demographics, revenue streams, staff situation, everything. She raised an eyebrow. You're serious about this? My mother died because a rural clinic didn't have the equipment to diagnose her pulmonary embolism in time. They had to transfer her to Denver, and she didn't survive the ambulance ride. I met her eyes. How many people here are one emergency away from the same thing? Too many. Then let's get to work. The first month was brutal. I threw myself into understanding every aspect of the hospital, from billing procedures to supply chain management to staffing schedules. I worked 18-hour days, sleeping in the on-call room, eating vending machine food. The staff was skeptical at first. Most of them had been there for years, watching the hospital slowly crumble while administrators promised change that never came. But I showed up. I cleaned bedpans when the nursing staff was overwhelmed. I helped transport patients. I sat with scared families in the waiting room at 2 a.m. And slowly, they started to talk to me. The big problem is the ER. Maria, our head nurse, explained one night over terrible coffee. We can't handle major trauma. Anything serious has to be transferred to Denver or Cheyenne, and by the time the helicopter gets here... She shrugged. We lose people we shouldn't lose. What would we need? A trauma surgeon, trauma-certified nurses, better imaging equipment, an OR that can handle complex cases. She laughed bitterly. Basically, a completely different hospital. What if we could get it? She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. With what money? The budget is already underwater. That night, I went through the financial records again. The hospital was losing money, yes, but not because of the clinical operations. We were being charged astronomical rates for basic supplies through a contracting company that I discovered after some digging was partially owned by Horizon Healthcare Corporation, the same company trying to buy the land. Brandon's fingerprints were all over it. I called an emergency staff meeting the next morning. 30 exhausted people crammed into the break room, most of them looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. I know you don't trust me yet, I said. I know you've heard promises before, but I need you to understand something. This hospital is being sabotaged. I showed them the supply contracts, the inflated billing, the kickback arrangements. We're paying 3 times market rate for basic medical supplies. And that money is going directly to the corporation that wants to buy this building and turn it into luxury condos. What are you saying? Someone asked. I'm saying we cut those contracts. We find new suppliers. We renegotiate everything. And we use the savings to actually improve patient care. The board will never approve that, Maria said. The board doesn't have a choice. My grandfather's will gives me full authority over operational decisions. I looked around the room. But I can't do this alone. I need to know right now, are you with me? Because if we do this, we're declaring war on some very powerful people, and it's going to get ugly. There was a long silence. Then Maria stood up. I've been watching this place die for 5 years. If you're offering a chance to fight back, I'm in. One by one, the others stood too. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. We canceled the predatory contracts and found new suppliers, local companies that charged fair rates and actually delivered on time. We negotiated with equipment manufacturers, traded out our ancient machines for refurbished models that worked. We cut administrative overhead and redirected the money to patient care. And slowly, incredibly, we started to break even. But success made us targets. The 3-month board review was ugly. David came prepared with binders full of complaints, most of them generated by Horizon's corporate office. Allegations of billing irregularities, questions about our supply chain, insinuations about my competence. You've made a lot of enemies, Maya, he said, sounding almost sympathetic. Horizon Healthcare is threatening to sue for breach of contract. They're claiming you violated existing agreements. Agreements that were financially predatory and possibly illegal. I shot back. I've already filed complaints with the state medical board about those contracts. I'm sure they'll be very interested in who approved them. Brandon's face went red. You can't prove. Actually, I can. Turns out paper trails are hard to hide when you bother to look. I pushed a folder across the table. Those are copies of all the documents I filed with state regulators. I'm sure they'll want to discuss the kickback arrangements with someone. This is slander, David said. But his voice had lost its smoothness. It's documentation. I stood up. And here's what else I have. Patient satisfaction scores are up 40%. ER wait times are down by half. We've recruited 2 new physicians who are excited about the community health model we're building. And we're on track to break even by month 6. Janet looked genuinely surprised. How? By actually caring about the mission instead of the money. I looked directly at Brandon. Some things matter more than profit margins. The meeting ended without a vote, but the tension was obvious. I'd won the battle, but the war was far from over. That night, I found Dr. Foster in her office, going through patient charts. You should go home, I said. It's almost midnight. Could say the same to you. She looked up, tired but pleased. You surprised me today. Most people would have caved under that pressure. I learned from the best. My father fought the Chen family for 20 years. Guess it runs in the blood. Your grandfather was right about you. She hesitated. There's something you should know. Tom, your grandfather, he tried to reconcile with your father. About 5 years ago. He sent letters, tried to call, but your father sent everything back unopened. My chest tightened. Why? Pride? Maybe? Pain? Your mother had just died, and I think your father was still angry about those things, Tom said. She pulled an envelope from her desk drawer. Tom gave me this before he died. He said if you ever showed up, if you actually tried to save this place, I should give it to you. The envelope was addressed to my father, dated 4 years ago. I opened it with shaking hands. The letter inside was an apology, a real one. Tom Chen acknowledging every terrible thing he'd said, every mistake he'd made. Admitting that my father had been right to choose love over money, that my mother had been extraordinary, that he'd been too proud and too stupid to see it until it was too late. I don't know how to make amends for 30 years of being wrong, the letter concluded. But I'm leaving Mountain View Hospital to Maya because I believe she understands what her father tried to teach me, that our worth isn't measured in bank accounts or family names, but in the lives we touch and the people we help. If she can save this hospital, she'll prove that integrity can survive in a world that values profit over people. She'll prove that her father was right all along. I sat there, tears streaming down my face, grieving for a relationship that might have been. For my father, who'd died never knowing his own father had finally understood. He loved your father, Dr. Foster said quietly. He was just too broken to show it while they were both alive. The next morning, I was in my office when Maria knocked on the door. "There's someone here to see you." Says his name is Connor Mitchell. The man who walked in was about my age, with calloused hands and sun-weathered skin. He wore the uniform of the county paramedics, and he looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. "Dr. Rodriguez. I'm the chief paramedic for this region. Nice to meet you. Coffee? Please." He took the mug gratefully. "I wanted to talk to you about the hospital's trauma capabilities. We're working on it, but I know. I've been watching what you're doing here. The improved equipment, the faster response times. My team is grateful." He set down his coffee. "But we're still losing people we shouldn't lose. Last week, we had a rancher who fell from a horse, ruptured spleen. He bled out in the ambulance because the nearest trauma center was 90 minutes away." His voice cracked slightly on that last part, and I understood. It wasn't just statistics to him. It was people he'd tried to save and couldn't. "What do you need from me?" "Permission to start training some of your nurses in advanced trauma response. If we can't get a full trauma center, at least we can improve field stabilization. It's not perfect, but it's better than what we have now." "Yes. Absolutely yes." I pulled out a notepad. "What else?" We talked for 2 hours. Connor had ideas, practical, achievable ideas about how to improve emergency response across 3 counties with limited resources. Mobile health clinics for the reservation. Telemedicine for initial consultations. Training programs for community first responders. "Why haven't you pitched this to the board before?" I asked. "I did. David Chen told me it wasn't cost-effective." Connor's jaw tightened. Said it was better to let nature take its course and focus on profitable patient demographics. He said that, almost word for word. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I said, "Okay, let's do it, all of it, whatever you need." He looked at me like I'd offered him the moon. "The board. The board doesn't get a vote. This is operational, and I have final authority." I smiled grimly. "Let them try to stop us." Over the next 3 months, Connor and I worked together constantly. He knew the community in ways I never could: the migrant worker families who were afraid of hospitals, the ranchers who'd rather die than admit they needed help, the uninsured who avoided care until conditions became critical. We launched the mobile clinic, staffed by volunteer nurses and paramedics. We set up telemedicine stations at the community center and the reservation's health office. We trained ranch hands in basic first aid. And slowly, incredibly, hospital admissions started to go down. Not because people were sicker, but because they were getting care earlier, before conditions became emergencies. "You're doing something remarkable here," Connor said one night. We were in his ambulance, heading back from a routine transport. "This is what healthcare should look like." "It's what my mother believed in," I said. "She used to say that health was a right, not a privilege, that a zip code shouldn't determine whether you live or die." She sounds like she was an amazing woman. She was. I looked out at the prairie, endless and beautiful under the stars. I spent so long trying to prove I was smart enough, good enough, worthy enough. And I think I forgot what she actually taught me: that the whole point is to help people, not to chase prestige. Connor was quiet for a moment. "You know, when you first showed up, I thought you were another rich kid playing at medicine, someone who'd get bored and leave. And now? Now I think you're probably the most stubborn person I've ever met." He grinned. "Which is exactly what this place needs." The 6-month board review should have been a victory lap. We'd achieved the impossible: the hospital was breaking even, patient outcomes were improving, and community support was stronger than ever. But David came prepared. "These improvements are superficial," he said, barely glancing at the reports I'd prepared. "You've reorganized deck chairs on the Titanic. The fundamental problems remain: aging infrastructure, inability to recruit specialists, limited patient demographics. And now you've added financial risk by expanding services to populations that can't pay. Those populations are the reason this hospital exists," I shot back. "And that's the problem." Brandon leaned forward, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. "Maya, I've been reviewing your operational decisions. The mobile clinic program loses money on every visit. The telemedicine consultations don't generate revenue. You've prioritized community health over financial sustainability. I've prioritized patient care. You've prioritized ideology." His voice hardened. "And the numbers prove it. Yes, you've managed to break even by cutting costs to the bone. But you've done nothing to address long-term growth. This hospital will never be profitable serving the population you're focused on. Maybe profit isn't the point. It is when you're running a business." David stood up. "I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. Dr. Rodriguez has proven she lacks the financial acumen to run a healthcare facility. We should begin orderly closure procedures and accept Horizon's standing offer." Second, Brandon said immediately. I felt the floor drop out from under me. You can't. We can and we are, David said. Janet, Dr. Morrison, your votes? There was a long silence. Janet looked genuinely torn. Dr. Morrison was checking his phone. Wait. Connor was standing in the doorway. He wasn't alone. Behind him were at least 40 people, nurses, patients, community members, ranchers in dusty jeans, indigenous elders, families with children. Who the hell are you? David demanded. We're the reason this hospital matters, Maria said, stepping forward. And we're here to tell you that if you try to close it, you'll have a fight on your hands. This is a private board meeting. This is a community hospital, an elderly Arapaho woman interrupted. My grandson is alive because Dr. Rodriguez's mobile clinic caught his diabetes early. My grandson. You want to put a price on that? I drove 200 miles to be here, a rancher said. Mountain View saved my daughter's life last month. You close this hospital, and you're killing people. Simple as that. One by one, they told their stories. The lives saved, the care received, the difference it made to have a hospital that actually cared about them. David tried to shut it down, tried to call security, but there was no security. Just a community defending something they'd decided was worth fighting for. Finally, Dr. Morrison looked up from his phone. You know what? I'm tired. I'm tired of these meetings, tired of this whole debate. Let's just see what happens. We give her the full 18 months, and if she fails, we sell. But we stop trying to sabotage her. I'll second that, Janet said quietly. David looked like he wanted to explode, but he was outvoted. Fine. 18 months. But when this fails, and it will, I want it on record that I warned you. After they left, I stood there shaking. Connor put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I thought we were done. Not even close. He smiled. You've got too many people rooting for you now. But the victory was short-lived. 2 weeks later, I got the call. Brandon had filed a complaint with the state medical board, alleging that I was practicing medicine without a license. Even though Dr. Foster was supervising all clinical decisions, even though I was purely in an administrative role, the investigation could take months. And during that investigation, my reinstatement hearing was suspended indefinitely. He's trying to make sure you can never practice again, Dr. Foster said, furious. This is personal for him. Because I left him or because I reported his fraud? Both, she sighed. Maya, you need to be prepared. Even if we win this, even if you save the hospital, you might never get your license back. Brandon has connections at the state board. He can make this drag out for years. That night, I sat in my office, staring at my medical degree on the wall. I'd spent 10 years earning that degree, 5 more years in training, given up everything for a career that had been taken from me in an instant. And for what? Because I'd tried to do the right thing? There was a knock on the door. Connor stuck his head in. Thought you might want company. Not great company tonight. Good thing I'm not picky. He sat down, pulling out a thermos. Real coffee. Not the paint thinner from the break room. We sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee and watching the night sky through the window. Can I ask you something? Connor finally said. Why did you report Brandon's fraud? You had to know it would blow up your life. Because people were dying. The words came out flat. The cardiac unit was falsifying mortality rates to meet federal benchmarks. They were rushing procedures, skipping safety protocols, and patients were dying because of it. And when I reported it to Brandon, he was the hospital's chief administrator, he told me to keep quiet. Said it was complicated, that I didn't understand the politics. So you went over his head. I went to the state board and the media. The hospital got investigated, people got fired, the unit got shut down, and then Brandon made sure everyone knew I was the one who'd reported it. Suddenly I was a whistleblower, a troublemaker, someone who couldn't be trusted. Other hospitals wouldn't touch me. The medical board suspended my license pending investigation, and Brandon filed for divorce, claiming I damaged his career and reputation. But you saved lives. Yeah, I laughed bitterly, and all it cost me was everything. Connor set down his coffee. You know what I think? I think Brandon didn't divorce you because you reported him. I think he divorced you because you were braver than he could ever be and he couldn't stand it. I looked at him, this man who'd spent the last 6 months working 18-hour days alongside me, who believed in the same things I did, who never once questioned whether the mission mattered. Why are you helping me? I asked. You could work anywhere. Denver, Cheyenne, somewhere with resources and backup and actual equipment. Why stay in the middle of nowhere, helping a disgraced surgeon try to save a dying hospital? Because it matters, he said simply. Because every life we save here is a life that would have been lost otherwise. Because sometimes the most important work is the hardest work, and someone has to do it. He met my eyes. And because you're not disgraced, you're the only one who did the right thing when everyone else looked away. Something shifted in my chest. For the first time in months, I didn't feel quite so alone. Month 12 brought the inspection. The state health department, responding to an anonymous complaint, we all knew it was Brandon, sent a team to review every aspect of our operations. They found violations. Of course, they did. The building was 40 years old, the infrastructure was aging, and we were operating on a shoestring budget. But they also found something else. These patient outcomes are remarkable, the lead inspector said, looking at our data. Your ER readmission rate is half the state average. Patient satisfaction is in the 90th percentile. And your community health metrics. She looked up. Dr. Rodriguez, what you're doing here, this is what rural healthcare should look like. Does that mean we pass? It means you have 60 days to address the infrastructure issues. New roof, updated electrical, that kind of thing. But the clinical operations? Those are exemplary. After they left, I did the math. The repairs would cost approximately $3 million. We had $50,000 in reserves. We're screwed, Maria said flatly. I called an emergency staff meeting. 40 exhausted, frustrated people crammed into the break room, and I told them the truth. We don't have the money for the repairs. If we can't fix the problems in 60 days, the state will shut us down. And even if we could raise the money, we'd have to shut down during construction, which means no revenue for at least a month. So we're done, someone said. Not necessarily. I took a deep breath. I have a trust fund from my grandfather. About $3 million. It was supposed to be, I don't know, a safety net, a future. But I want to use it for the repairs. The room erupted. People telling me I was crazy, that I couldn't risk my future like that the hospital wasn't my responsibility. Actually, it is, I said quietly. My grandfather left me this hospital because he believed it mattered more than money. And you know what? He was right. So yes, I'm using the money. And when we reopen, we're going to prove that healthcare can be both excellent and accessible. That serving people who can't pay isn't charity, it's the whole damn point. Connor was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Pride, maybe? Or something deeper. Let's get to work, he said. The next 60 days were chaos. We closed the hospital for major construction, redirected emergency cases to other facilities, and fought to make every dollar stretch. The community rallied, ranchers did labor, local businesses donated materials, volunteers worked around the clock, and Connor was there every step of the way. We fell into a rhythm, working until we couldn't stand, collapsing in the on-call room for a few hours of sleep, then starting again. Late one night, covered in drywall dust and exhausted, we sat on the roof watching the stars. Can I tell you something? Connor said. I was married once. 5 years ago. She was a surgeon in Denver. What happened? She wanted me to move to the city, take a job with better pay, better hours. Said I was wasting my talent out here in the middle of nowhere. He was quiet for a moment. She wasn't wrong exactly. I could make 3 times the salary in Denver. But this is where I'm supposed to be. These are my people. She didn't understand that. She thought I was choosing poverty over ambition. What she didn't get was that some things matter more than money. He looked at me. You get it, though. You gave up everything to do the right thing. You risked your career, your marriage, your whole future because you believed in something bigger than yourself. I'm not sure that makes me noble. Maybe it just makes me stubborn. Maybe stubborn and noble are the same thing. He shifted closer. Maya, I need to tell you something. These last few months, working with you, watching you fight for this place, I've never met anyone like you. You're brilliant and brave and so damn determined. And I kissed him. It felt like coming home. When we finally pulled apart, he was smiling. I was going to say I'm falling in love with you, but that works too. I'm a disaster, I warned him. No license, no savings, possibly about to fail spectacularly at saving a hospital. You could do so much better. I don't want better, I want you. We reopened on day 59, cutting it so close that the state inspector was literally there for the final walkthrough. She signed off with a smile. Dr. Rodriguez, you pulled off a miracle. Team effort, I said, looking at the staff, my team who'd worked around the clock to make it happen. The 18-month board review fell on a cold November morning. David looked older, tired. Brandon had the expression of someone who'd already won. Janet seemed genuinely curious. Dr. Morrison was, as always, checking his phone. "I'll be direct," David said. "You've survived longer than I expected. But the numbers don't lie. You spent $3 million of personal money on infrastructure repairs. The hospital is breaking even, but only barely. You're one bad quarter away from financial collapse, and you have no reserves. This is not sustainable." "Actually," I said, pulling out a folder, "I have some news." I'd spent the last month on the phone with foundations, federal agencies, and grant organizations. I'd written proposals, made pitches, called in every favor I could. The Department of Health and Human Services has designated Mountain View Hospital as a critical access hospital. That comes with enhanced reimbursement rates and federal funding. The state has approved us for a rural health grant, $2 million over 3 years, and the Wyoming Community Foundation has established an endowment to support our community health programs. I laid out the documents. Page after page of approvals, grants, commitments. We're not just breaking even anymore. We're building a model for rural healthcare that other communities can replicate. We're proof that excellent care and financial sustainability aren't mutually exclusive. You just have to care more about patients than profit margins. Janet was smiling. Dr. Morrison looked up from his phone, genuinely interested. Even David seemed momentarily speechless. Then Brandon stood up. "This is all very impressive. But there's one problem. Maya, your medical license suspension was just extended another 6 months. The state board is pursuing new allegations, practicing without a license, administrative fraud, endangering patient safety." My blood ran cold. Those allegations are false. "Maybe. But in the meantime, you can't serve as chief medical officer without a valid license. The hospital's insurance won't cover it, and the state won't approve it." He smiled, and it was the smile I remembered from our marriage, the one that meant he'd won. "I've already spoken to the insurance carrier. They're pulling coverage in 30 days unless you resign." "You son of a..." "I'm protecting this hospital from liability," he said smoothly. "If you care about Mountain View as much as you claim, you'll step down. Let someone qualified take over. Unless you want to be responsible for shutting it down." Connor stood up. "If she goes, I go. And I'm betting half the staff goes with her. Then this place will close for lack of personnel, and the end result is the same." Brandon looked at me. "You lose, Maya. Just like you always do. Because you're too idealistic to understand how the real world works." I was shaking with rage and desperation. He was right. If the insurance pulled out, the hospital was done. Everything we'd built, everything we'd fought for, gone because Brandon couldn't stand to see me succeed. "There is one other option." Dr. Foster walked in holding a folder. Thomas Chen was very specific in his will. "If Maya is unable to serve as CMO due to circumstances beyond her control, administrative authority passes to a successor of her choosing, someone with appropriate credentials and no license issues." She set the folder on the table. "I'm 72 years old. I was planning to retire next year. But if Maya appoints me as acting CMO, I can serve while the license issues are resolved. The insurance will cover it, the state will approve it, and this hospital can continue operating." "You'd do that?" I whispered. "Your grandfather and I disagreed about many things. But he was right about you. You have integrity, Maya. You have your father's conscience and your mother's compassion. And I'll be damned if I let small-minded bureaucrats destroy what you've built." David looked at Brandon, who looked like he'd swallowed something poisonous. "All in favor of accepting this arrangement?" Janet said. "Aye." "Aye," Dr. Morrison added. David hesitated, then sighed. "Aye." "Opposed?" Silence. "Then it's settled. Dr. Foster will serve as acting CMO. Dr. Rodriguez will continue in a senior advisory role. And this board will reconvene in 6 months for final approval of Mountain View's long-term viability." After the meeting, I found Dr. Foster in her office. "Why would you do this? You were going to retire, enjoy your life." "Because your grandfather asked me to," she said quietly, not explicitly. "But in that letter I gave you, he talked about how he'd failed your father by not seeing what mattered until it was too late. He didn't want to make the same mistake with you." She handed me another envelope. "He left me instructions. If you made it to 18 months, if you actually succeeded in saving this place, I was supposed to give you this." Inside was a key and a note. "The key is to a safe deposit box in Boulder. Inside, you'll find letters, 30 years of letters your grandfather wrote to your father but never sent. Apologies, attempts at reconciliation, updates on the family. He never had the courage to mail them. But he wanted you to know that he tried." I sat there, crying, grieving for relationships that could have been, for pride and stubbornness that cost my family so much. Maya, Dr. Foster said gently, your grandfather's last words to me were, tell her I'm proud. So I'm telling you. He was proud, and your father would be proud too. 6 months later, the board met for the final vote. Mountain View Hospital was thriving. We'd recruited 2 new physicians, expanded our telemedicine program, and launched a partnership with the University of Wyoming Medical School to train rural health specialists. My medical license had been reinstated, the state board had finally completed their investigation and found all of Brandon's allegations to be baseless retaliation. He'd been censured for filing false complaints and was facing his own ethics review. The vote was unanimous. Mountain View Hospital would remain open, a permanent part of the Chen Medical Group, with a new mission statement emphasizing community health over profit. David approached me after. I underestimated you. I thought you were playing at this, that you'd give up when things got hard. But you really believed in it. My father taught me that integrity is worth more than money. It took me a while to understand what that meant. For what it's worth, I read his letters, the ones grandfather never sent. They made me realize how much time we wasted on pride and grudges. He paused. I'd like to get to know you, Maya. If you're willing to try, I'd like that. That evening, Connor and I drove out to the prairie, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. We'd been officially together for 6 months now, and I still marveled at how easy it was. How he understood the work, supported the mission, never asked me to be anything other than who I was. I have something for you, he said, pulling out a small box. Inside was a simple ring silver with a small turquoise stone. Connor, before you panic, this isn't a proposal. Not yet. I know you need time, and after everything with Brandon, I understand why. He took my hand. But I want you to know my intentions. I'm not going anywhere. I believe in you, I believe in us, and I believe in the work we're doing together. This ring is a promise that I'm in this for the long haul, however long it takes. I slipped the ring on my finger. It fit perfectly. I love you, I said. And when I'm ready, and I will be ready, my answer is going to be yes. A year later, I stood in my office at Mountain View Hospital, looking at the photos on the wall. My mother as a young nurse, my father on his wedding day, my grandfather in front of the hospital he'd built. And new photos, the community health fair we'd organized, the mobile clinic team, Connor and me cutting the ribbon on our new trauma wing. Dr. Foster knocked on the door. Ready? The ceremony's about to start. We'd established the Chen Rodriguez Fellowship in Rural Medicine, funding for medical students who wanted to practice in underserved communities. The first recipients were being announced today. As I walked into the auditorium, I saw the faces of people whose lives we'd changed and who had changed mine in return. Maria and the nursing staff. The community members who'd fought to save the hospital, the patients who'd trusted us with their care, and Connor, standing in the front row, smiling at me with pride and love. I thought about the woman I'd been 18 months ago, broken, homeless, certain that my life was over. And I thought about what my grandfather had written. Prove me wrong one last time. Show me that integrity can survive in this world. I'd proven him wrong. But more importantly, I'd proven him right. Because sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out what actually matters. And what mattered wasn't the money or the prestige or the career I'd lost. It was this standing in a hospital that saved lives, surrounded by people who believed in something bigger than themselves, doing work that actually made a difference. My mother had been right all along. Health was a right, not a privilege, and a zip code shouldn't determine whether you lived or died. It had taken me 32 years and losing everything to understand that lesson. But now that I knew it, I was never letting it go. This was my legacy. Not the money I'd inherited or the title I'd earned, but the lives we saved and the community we'd built and the proof that integrity could not just survive, but thrive. And that was worth everything.